here today with our first father and son. We've had a mother and daughter authors, but these are our first father and son, Jordan Berk and Peter Berk. Jordan's new book is the Timestream Verdict, and I have a link pinned at the top of the chat, and I have a link in the video description so you can check it out. But why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Jordan, you can go first and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then your dad can.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carolyn, for hosting us, and hello, everyone watching live. I'm Jordan Berk. I'm a first-time author, but long-time science fiction and time travel reader. And this book kind of merges those genres with crime and trial genres. And I'm here in Southern California, 2 kids, and having a lot of fun, going through this through the process of publishing my first novel.
Great. Congratulations on your new novel. And Peter, what about you?
This is actually my 3rd novel, First Line of Defense. The previous 2 were co-written in a way with my late father. I say in a way because they're based on screenplays that he and I wrote together, and he was a wonderful writer and a great dad. He wrote Columbo and Mission Impossible and Rockford Files, a lot of classic shows. So it's pretty amazing to see one of my 2 sons follow in my dad's footsteps and turn out to be such a superb writer himself.
So you grew up with your dad writing for those, first kind of detective shows. My dad loved those shows too, Columbo and all those Rockford Files. So I was reading about that. So did you have a natural interest in crime drama or true crime growing up? Was it in your bones to say because growing up with a dad like that wrote for shows like that?
Yes, I also had, and I'm sure Jordan got some of this from me, leaning toward science fiction, Star Trek. One of the most exciting days of my life was visiting with my dad on the Paramount lot and being on the set of the original Star Trek. And even some of the shows he wrote that were more crime-oriented, like Mission Impossible, had a slight sci-fi element. So the combination of the 2 absolutely influenced me. And I loved watching, it wasn't a chore to have to watch those my dad worked on. I mean, I was a fan of those shows anyway.
Oh, good. So, Jordan, tell us about your book. Give us a synopsis of what we can expect.
Absolutely. So it revolves around the jury for the first case of time travel murder. So that's kind of the log line, but essentially there's a time travel exists in the future. A murder takes place that involves the use of time travel, and the jury is assembled from people plucked across modern history. So the main character is pulled in 60 years into his future from 1985 into 2042, and all of the other jurors are assembled in a similar way. And so there's this eclectic mix of people from different times. You get some of the classic time travel tropes like fish out of water and discovering all this futuristic technology. But it kind of has a balance of that futuristic sci-fi technological bent, and then kind of merges or pivots into a bit more of a straightforward trial, and then take some left turns from there, as you may imagine, with the genre. But it was fun to write all of the elements, but definitely the trial elements were the most outside my comfort zone, but in the end, I think some of the most successful.
So the murder takes place in 2042. Is that?
Not quite. The murder takes place in 1989 or 88, but it's kind of dormant, goes cold, and then there's some new discoveries in the future that reopen the case and to lead to the trial.
Okay, and so you said you're not really interested in, do you watch a lot of true crime trials, or like are there certain ones that you've watched? Or
It's a mix. I mean, it's definitely not nowhere close to like sci-fi in my rankings of genres, but definitely there were influences and not maybe not quite true crime, but my or not the true part of it at least. My wife loves like Law and Order and Law and Order SVU, so that was on in the background while I was writing a lot of the book. So some of the jargon and the courtroom stuff I kind of pulled from there just because it was ambient noise. But
right.
I tried to pull in different influences from movies and TV, more probably on the like the courtroom side than like the true crime side, but I'm sure some influences snuck in that maybe I'm not even consciously aware of.
Okay, and your main character is from, you said 1985, he was an accountant. Is there a reason you chose like the 80s, the 89 for the murder and 85 for your character?
Some of it just kind of felt like it fit, but 1985 in particular was a tribute to my favorite movie, Back to the Future. Also very much time travel, of course. Kind of the preeminent time travel movie
Right.
in my opinion. And so that movie takes place in that year and was released that year. Well, I guess it takes place mostly 30 years earlier, but that was my little tribute. And then all of the other years that are relevant are kind of based on that. I wanted him to jump forward enough that everything would be, amazing and futuristic and near magical. And it had to be far enough in the future from present day that some of the technology that's in the book is, realistic, but also fun and amazing to us as well.
What other, can you tell us just a couple of pieces of technology that are in the 2042?
Yeah, some of it is like more, we can see it coming even in our real world, like autonomous cars or, like omnipresent AI assistants. And some of it is a little more fantastical, like medical scanners that can heal any ailment, or I'm trying to think. Well, time travel for
Yeah.
one. That's probably the most unrealistic of all. But it's a lot of little things. I didn't try to. I wanted the world to be recognizable to our own. It's a lot of little things that kind of improve quality of life and kind of coddle the people of the fictional future.
Now, so your dad, because it says your dad worked with you on some, what is it that he worked with you on, a series or
Well, he actually inspired this book.
this book?
It
Yeah,
was
that's what I thought. I said, okay, co-authored this book,
Yeah.
right? Is this what you have, right?
Yeah. So it was a story that, or I guess like a tagline that he pitched. What if there was a jury from the past to deliberate on something from the future? And that was where his pitch ended, and my story starts. Obviously, like 10 words became 70,000 words, but still, I definitely would not have had the inspiration or the creativity to think of that story without him mentioning that. And then once I was done with the manuscript, I worked on it in secret and then presented it as a surprise about a year later, and as a Father's Day gift. And once that took place, then we worked on it together and collaborated. And he had some great ideas to flesh it out and improve especially the ending.
Is that what inspired you? Like that line he gave you, did that really give you the inspiration to write the book? Do you think? Is that?
It did. I never wanted to be a writer. I never wanted to have a novel published. Like the thought had never crossed my mind for a second. It was something about this story, and like I percolated on it and expanded on it, and like it started to fit together, in terms of like what's the trial about? Like who is the juror? Who are the characters? Like how does everything come together? And then at the same time, not coincidentally, was also when my dad's first book was being published, TimeLock, and so that was a different kind of inspiration, showing that like there's hope for, if I write this, like maybe it can be published if it's
Right.
as good as his and worthy of of getting out there. So yeah, those dual inspirations of the story and the hope of publishing was the driving factor for getting started.
Right, and it took you only about a year to write it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, 10, 11 months to write the manuscript. It was a bit shorter at the time. It's about 10% bigger and longer than it was then, or actually about 20%. But yeah, I mean, the core of the story was there from that first version.
Very good. And so, Peter, so what you wrote, is it also time travel? Did you write about time travel?
Oh, it has the word time in it, but it's actually, my dad and I wrote a screenplay. It was called Quick Time back then, but I wasn't able to use that for the novel because Apple, right, Jordan, Apple owns that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to get sued, so
No.
we changed the name. But it was actually my dad's premise, and the idea was that sometime in the future, 10 years, not Jordan's future, just maybe a decade from now, prison overcrowding is a huge problem and crime is rampant. And a technology is developed where certain prisoners are instantly aged the number of years of their sentence. They go through a cellular acceleration. So we wrote a whole screenplay, and it's set in Washington and it has political aspects to it, and we just couldn't get it off the ground. It's too big budget of a film. And when COVID hit, I thought, I'm going to go crazy, stuck in my house doing nothing. And so I decided to novelize that script and found Ingram Elliott, which is both of our publishers, and they really liked it, and that turned into a series. The second one came out last year, and there are 3 more at least in the pipeline. A couple of them also based on other scripts I wrote with my dad. And that was the great inspiration for me, is to honor his memory. I knew I would never be in his league as a writer, but to be able to talk about him as I am right now,
Yeah.
has just been so incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
And then, to have Jordan turn out to be so incredibly gifted as a writer, I know I'm a little biased, but when he did hand me that Father's Day manuscript, I of course was shocked. So was his mom, my wife. Nobody knew except Jordan's wife, but then I was a little bit nervous. Like, what if it's not that great? What do I do? He wants honesty, and then I'm like 3 pages in and thinking, this is better than anything I've ever written. He's brilliant.
Right.
I'm sending this to Ingram Elliott, and they felt the same way. So I had very little to do with it. It was the one sentence at the beginning and a little help at the end, but he sure didn't need any help, and I hope he continues to write. I, on the other hand, Jordan came into this sort of like, if it happens, it happens. It's not my life's work. I've never thought about it. I, on the other hand, have been, waiting 800 years to finally get something published.
Right.
So, it's that they should all happen roughly at the same time has been great.
That's great. That's great. Kevin
Yes,
says it's an amazing Father's Day gift. Kevin, he said that was an amazing Father's Day gift. Yeah.
And my new book, which was not something I worked on with my dad, is actually dedicated to my late mom, Lynn. So just for your moms in the audience, I was very fortunate. I had great parents, and so I'm able to thank them this way, years after they've gone.
Yeah, that's a special thing. I understand what you mean. Yeah, but so it's like a lot of people like time travel, and it's exciting and it's fun. And I think you gave the 80s a big thing, but it's like you write about what you know. So I think you probably had I don't know how old you are, but maybe you like the 80s or something, or there's something about the 80s besides that being your favorite movie. I don't know. I just think that maybe you choose because you don't want to have something that you don't know. And going into the future, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty about what will be there. And I just know, like with true crime, I always say this: you can't get away with murder. It's not an option anymore. And I want to get shirts that say murder is not an option, because all these people that try to solve their problems with murder, they're locked up the next day because our technology is so advanced now, right? With DNA, cameras, your digital footprint is everywhere. You're not going to get away with it. So I can't even imagine, like in 2042, what we're going to have. But your murder is not set at that time, because that's what I was thinking, like, okay, at 2042, would you even need a jury, because they're just going to be, I can't even imagine what the technology is going to be like.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up, actually, because the defendant is caught. He completely covers his digital footprints, like he's a genius and thinks about that. But the reason he's caught is because some fingerprints are found like 60 years later that match. So he thinks about everything modern, but forgets about some of the forensic stuff from that's over 100 years old.
Right.
So it goes along with what you're saying, but kind of inversed in a way.
Right. Yeah, because it's crazy, the technology that we have today, and there's people that still think, oh, they're smarter, they're going to outsmart every system. They're going to get rid of the phone. They get burner phones, and I don't know, because we do a lot of true crime here, cover a lot of true crime. It's just incredible how quickly, and then you see these people threw away their entire life because like they didn't want to pay child support, or they didn't want to do, and it's scary to think that so many people jump right away to murder to solve their problems. It's just crazy. While we may want to watch it on the screen and stuff, but there's really a lot of people that are just doing this, and 2 or 3 people are getting together and thinking like, and always think that one person will say, okay, that's just a crazy thought you have. You're not going to really do that. But then you get 2 or 3 people together and they're doing it. Just is baffling to me with the technology we have, that you're not going to get away with it.
Right.
Besides morally wrong, right? You're not going to get away with it. It's just, there's too much. There's too much tracking on every single thing that we do. And the only thing, you're in computers, like I always love when they say, nothing you do on your computer will be erased, except those pictures that you really needed to find, right? Like that you swore, please don't be erased. Those are the ones, or that Word document you were working on, you can't find that. I'm like, that's when I want to call the FBI. Come over here. You said nothing has ever gone from my computer. Please bring this back for me.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Right? Because, yeah, it's just amazing, though, what we're like into a lot of trials. See, trials, I do like trials. There's certain trials I could watch, like Jodi Arias, over and over again, because that was such a riveting, she was like 19 days on the stand, and just craziness. But so you have this jury, and that's must be interesting. So a jury from people from all phases of time, right? All so you have some people from Victorian eras, or
not that old.
Not that old.
The justification, it starts in 1950, and the justification in the book is that anyone from beyond that into the past just like wouldn't be able to handle the transition. Which I think is probably true, but also as an author, I didn't want to like have a caveman there and Victorian. It just would get a little too messy and kind of change the focus of the story.
So are there 12 jurors in there?
There are 12, yep, and spread across. And some of them are more recent, like there's one from the 2030s, and there's one who is contemporary to the trial. It's not, the jurors themselves are not necessarily a big part of it. It's other than the protagonist. And that's more of the setup and less of the actual story. But it was fun to be able to write, and get all of these different perspectives. Like one, the more recent ones are kind of jaded and like whatever, we've seen all this, and the one there's one from the 50s who like just finished World War II and and is completely shell shocked from the war and from the journey to the future.
Can you tell us about the murder? Like what was?
Yeah. There's it's explained pretty early on, so this is not a spoiler by any means.
Okay.
The victim is actually the inventor of time travel, and from the 80s, the inadvertent inventor of time travel. She creates a formula. A Berkeley professor. She creates a formula that she does not realize at all will allow for time travel. That it's discovered many years later that it does. And she's murdered or possible suicide, possible murder. It's unclear. In her home in the 80s, and when the trial takes place, there's new evidence that shows that the fingerprints that were discovered at the scene of the crime, which had no match at the time, suddenly have a match that showed up because it's somebody from the future, who is a scientist, essentially a time travel scientist, following in her footsteps. And there's obviously a lot of detail that we go into in the trial, and without giving anything away, I'll say that like all of the detail that comes up in the trial pays off, either beforehand or after. It's all kind of explored in a new way.
Okay, and so your character, I mean, is there any kind of does he have a love interest in the new time?
It ends with a romance, but there's not that's not really
not a lot of romance. Okay,
it's actually more it's more an exploration of platonic relationships. There's some really deep platonic relationships.
Okay, and is there anything I'm saying, like I don't know, I guess there's probably a bunch of little storylines in between that with his relationships and things, epiphanies of his, maybe with going through the time, right? Like there would be, and we don't want you to give any spoilers, but it's the Timestream Verdict by Jordan Berk. And what was the name of your book?
First Line of Defense.
First Line of Defense. I'll put that in the description.
Also a courtroom murder mystery.
About what type of murder?
Nothing to do with time travel. This is actually the president's son is arrested for murdering his best friend and a college dorm mate.
Wow.
And he doesn't think he did it, but he blacked out the night before, and he can't imagine that he did it, but he is arrested. But the twist to the story is that he's sort of estranged from his dad at the beginning, and then for a variety of reasons, his father ends up going to court and actually defending him, even though he's still the president of the United States. So he puts his entire administration at risk to help his son, and he ultimately uncovers, the truth behind the whole crime. And it's like Jordan's book; it's all first person, as were the TimeLock books. I think Jordan and I sort of share a fondness for writing in first person. It kind of allows us to, delve into more feelings and even humor. Both of our books sound so heavy and serious, and they're really fairly light, ironically. So are the TimeLock books, even though the premise sounds almost, serious or dystopian. I think we both share we often finish each other's jokes or attempted jokes, in my case. And, I think we have a very similar sensibility, and I think these books are a lot, lighter than they seem in parts.
Yeah. I know. I get it. Yeah, because I'm, a person that firmly believes like humor, even in like darkest thing, like it's something that I've grown up with, like kind of it's a way of coping. It's and I have a lot of friends like that. There's heavy stuff we go through, and sometimes people can say, well, how can you joke or say something like that? But it's a coping mechanism. And
Yes,
humor
and
is, yeah, it definitely is. And so that's why some of the comedians that, you think are the funniest, they've gone through some real heavy stuff, and they use humor as a coping mechanism. And we saw that with Robin Williams. And, it's not all, like if they make people laugh, but really a lot of times they're going through some heavy stuff, but they've used humor to cope with stuff. So,
Yeah.
absolutely. Right.
And to bring it back to my dad's book, just really briefly, I'm actually reading it now,
yeah.
or rereading it because I read a much earlier version, probably 10 years ago. So it's all pretty fresh to me. I don't remember where it goes, but it's a great read, and much more so than my book. I would say, even without the extra layer of the the president being involved and giving it that weightiness, it is much more of a straightforward, crime and trial novel, which is a very refreshing read. And then of course it does have that extra element, which adds a whole extra layer of interest and intrigue. So it's really been a pleasant read.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I mean, yeah, it sounds very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for reading that just the way I wrote it. No, I'm kidding. This is all George.
Right.
But I still say he's the better writer. But I think Jordan's character is how old? 35?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mid
For
30s.
some reason, it's I keep writing 21-year-old young men. So it's been bizarre to be as old as I am writing first person as a 20-year-old, but by coincidence that
A lot of times we see ourselves as people much younger than we are, right? Sometimes I feel like, we talk about our friends, I still feel like I'm 14 sometimes. And, it's like, it's hard to fathom that we're getting older, like, because we don't feel that way. And it's like, well, wow, they look old, or they look old. And, like, hey, you're the same age, But my husband has a shirt, it says something about, like, I can't believe I'm old people's age or something. I forget what it says, but it's just like, because you don't feel that old, right? We don't feel that old usually. And thank God we're doing stuff, and just it's everybody that we say, oh, that's old. When you get to that age, it's not that old. But
the funny thing for me, when I was writing the TimeLock book, the character is 23 when it starts, but he's aged 20 years because of the process of the TimeLock process that I mentioned. And of course it's shocking to him. He's suddenly a middle-aged man, and as I'm reading what writing what he's feeling, I'm thinking, stop complaining. You're only 43. I pay serious money to be only 43 again, but
right.
but it's fun.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. And then see, if anybody's saying, he's saying that's interesting. Sounds like a fun read. Yeah, I think we have a lot of people that watch on replay too. So, like I said, I'm going to put your link in there, and I'm sure it does sound very interesting. You're going to see some people picking up the book, and again, the Timestream Verdict. And when did this book come out, Jordan?
Last month, almost
Last
exactly
month.
a month ago, September 10th.
September 10th. Okay, the Timestream Verdict. Well, thank you for coming in and speaking with me today on this. I really appreciate it, and definitely I'm going to get into this, and I'm going to let my son read it because I think he will really like this, and he likes time travel. I think I'm going to pick up your dad's book because that is like up my alley with right into trials, and so I love that stuff.
Yeah,
but
something for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys so much for coming in, and I hope you have a great weekend. And thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you later on today. Bye-bye, guys.
Thanks
Bye.
so much. Take care.
You too. Okay, everybody. I'll see you later today. It's 2:30 now. I've got to do a few things. Maybe I was going to come and do some crafting. I don't know, but I'll be on later. I can't believe it's Friday, but I've got some errands to run and some stuff to do. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll put the link to Dad Peter's book in here right after I end this, okay? Everybody take care. Love you. God bless. Prayers. And we'll see you later on.